faced that problem now of saying, and by the way, nobody bought digital albums then, it was all physical albums, so we actually had to get people to go to the shops to buy them. If you now had to get that album to number one in 2 days, I just can't imagine the media plan that you'd have to pull together to get across. You probably wouldn't buy a TV, you'd probably ignore TV altogether. There'd no point in going to the expense of making the TV trail for those 2 days. So you'd have to go right across the internet. I imagine you'd have to spend so much more money across the internet than we did on 3 or 4 huge spots on TV to get album to number one. So I think it's just obviously that fragmentation of media and trying to reach them is incredibly hard. And they've got so much more to do now. They've got so much more technology play. They've got so much more distractions that reaching them and getting their attention and going to where they are and putting something in front of them they're interested in is incredibly difficult.
So we've got kind of a lot of broadcasters on stage which are currently targeting 16 to 34s. Have you kind of got a perspective from kind of a younger audience, Phil, from the Disney perspective, which will be the audience in a few years' time?
So our audience, likewise, a few years ago, if we'd had a big movie or a launch and wanted to drive to live for appointment to view, we found that kind of quite easy to do. Now it's much, much more difficult. So we're having to kind of go across many more platforms, use social, kind of work much harder to get people engaged into why they need to watch it live. And in fact, if we look at overnights, the amount of PVRing on the day and the following weekend is just increasing over time. Trying to convince a young audience something is special and you have to watch it live is increasingly difficult. Most of my audience, I think, called digital natives. You know, they've grown up being able to pause TV when they want to, and that's what they do. And you know, we see kids going up to posters and trying to make them bigger with their fingers. You know, you have to start thinking a different way. I think, you know, part of our business is a franchise business, so getting our audience to engage with it over a period of time, so they get to like it and so on is one of the KPIs that kind of lets us off the hook of getting big audience immediately, but it's much more difficult these days.
Kind of moving on from that, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of see how everybody approaches targeting the 16 to 34 audience and kind of what you do specifically that differs from targeting other kind of age sectors. I'm not picking on Rich again, so anyone, Emma, do you want to kick off with this one and then move down the line?
I think building on Rich's point about salience, that's the biggest thing that we need to overcome. And the organic approach definitely works best for a younger audience. So I think people, their friends, your starting point, don't want to start branding sexy PGI stats around, but I think about 39% of 16 to 24 say their friends are more influential than anything else. And obviously when you're at a young age, you're constantly trying to fit in with everyone else around you and you're still building your brand preferences. So, you know, it's they're the people that you need to start with, and you need to activate your influencer groups. And I don't mean necessarily YouTube stars with 100,000 followers. I mean activate conversations within groups of kind of genuine people who can spread the word about your program or your brand or whatever you're trying to market. I'm not saying that above the line and broadcast comms aren't effective, but if you start that fire beneath whatever you're trying to do, when you introduce your above the line tactics, they're often much more salient.
Rich?
I think one of the biggest problems we found with some of our kind of BBC Three and Radio 1 campaigns is getting people to do something more than just watch a video or click on a tweet and then go somewhere else. So getting them out of Facebook or out of Twitter into our content is incredibly difficult, because I think this audience if they see something they're interested in, it's a Radio 1 live lounge, and maybe it's only kind of 20 seconds of that live lounge, they want to click through to watch more. They just think that 20 seconds is that they've engaged with it, that's them done, they're on scrolling back through Facebook looking for the next thing. So it's kind of making sure that we put the right content into the right platforms to kind of engage people and hopefully get them to carry on a journey as well. Just kind of getting them out of Facebook and Twitter is a really difficult thing. So do we count Facebook and Twitter as an engagement with Radio 1 and BBC 3 if they've watched a bit of our stuff that we've put and paid for to be there? I think that's a massive challenge to kind of measure in what we say is actually engaging with the BBC or actually engaging with any of those youth audiences. And you have to make the right content for those platforms. There's no use sticking a 30-second TV trail into Facebook, Twitter and YouTube because that content doesn't work in those environments. You have to make the content fit to those people's experience on those platforms.
Okay. Do you watch it?
So Twitter and Facebook, although you're supposed to be over 13 to have an account, we know kids are engaging on those platforms kind of at a younger age. And so a lot of kind of our campaigns now, the make list for the assets that might go in, Twitter streams and Facebook and so on, kind of matches, if not kind of exceeds that for kind of on air. And to some extent, that interaction is about building some affinity with the show, so that your interest is piqued, that you want to be part of it. Kind of a few years ago, you'd have to have gone back to school to talk in the playground for that buzz to kind of generate itself. Now, some of it we can kind of do in those social settings.
With social media sites having that minimum age, is there anything in particular you do to kind of safeguard your targeting and pushes to social? Obviously, under 13s will be using parents' accounts, depending how close to 13 they are.
So we're not really targeting kind of younger viewers in that sense. We're targeting the older viewers. We don't push to it from on air. So we have the US have accounts for Disney Channel and so on. So we've set up UK ones, and that's where our audience wants to kind of have the conversation with us. We try and super serve them as well. So if we've got a promo that we can put up a day ahead on social, we try and use that as a bit of momentum to kind of get likes behind it and so on. And it's now becoming, we showed a one-off promo in kind of a big music show we had on a couple of weeks ago, and it got about 100,000 kids see it live. Over the same weekend, we put it on social, and it got 100,000 kids seeing it on social. And in that environment, they're able to kind of comment on it as well. So all that's sort of moderated from our end so that people can't say things about it that, other kids are going to see.
I think what we found is you can't simply just talk at them, you have to involve them. And ultimately that still does start from within you, because a lot of any kind of hashtag pushes or any social buzz, and can be obviously driven by paid for social, but the linear platform is great at driving that conversation to begin with, so you can't ignore that and say, oh yeah, it's all done by social, because that linear place is massively important in doing that. But for the kind of youth market, it's very much, if you're going to talk at them, you have to involve them, and that's making sure the content you're posting on your different platforms is relevant to them and get them and kind of gives them a reason to get involved. And they're these digitally native, they're self-marketeers, and they know they can see through the bullshit if you're just trying to, if it's obvious that what you're saying to them is you want a return. So therefore, your planning and the content planning from a marketing perspective has to be relevant to them in the right environment, so that there is a kind of return path there for them to be engaged with the brand and then ultimately engaged from a ratings perspective.
What do you think, Tom? You don't have to with
Yeah.
this one?
I think going back to the points, it's relevant content. So because the youth audience are largely always on in terms of mobile, smartphone, etc. Everything's happening in stream. So every piece of content is competing against millions and other pieces of content, including your friends, etc. What with new Facebook announcing this week that you can now start to sort of exclude brands essentially and just pin up what you want to see. It just makes content has to be more relevant for that audience. And equally, you need that paid media support in those platforms to reach those to reach that audience. Unfortunately, specifically with organic reach just massively diving and Facebook doing a bait and switch on media essentially means that you can use data more for this audience as well.
Yeah.
So we probably would have talked about programmatic today already, but specifically based on interest rather than demographics to get that content, as Rich said, to the right person in the right place at the right time.
Round of applause please for the panel.